Oh my word, tennis at Roland Garros is nothing like what you see on the television live. Most of the game. Some of the ones that you want to see are on small courts when you're in the same room. It must be like being a supply teacher for those players. They must have had to block out so much. So resilient, and then they've got an opponent. Oh, but there is usually a teaching assistant in the classroom, so quite similar. Players' own supporters get excited and they want to be heard to be cheering on their favourite, and perhaps sometimes after the crowd has lulled a little bit, they get a little bit excited too late. And their own player takes this as heckling. They know it's for them, but there's so many idiots is so often clear that that's the player's opinion of the spectator, the supporter. You say so because Swiatek, the women's number one, had a clearly usually quite timid woman right behind me call out her name just as she was bouncing the ball to serve. She called this out at the interview at the end, criticised at the time and then supported by the management. I myself felt the shame of supporting the underdog with a "Somebody called me Sebastian," the Steve Harvey Cockley Rebels quote. He hadn't even started bouncing the ball. He missed the first serve and did a little exclamation to the umpire. I'm only there because it's a half-empty French crowd, and because it's raining, they've let anyone leaving go into the second stadium for free. But his opponent, Corentin Moutet, has got the football crowd and the rappers on his side, as supporters. It's crazy, it's just nuts, and a little bit scary, in the sense of they're far right. It's type nationalist tone to some of the chanting. The player in a different game was making out that he was spat on. This seems unlikely because it's only the rich seats that get anywhere near that close. Possibly it would have been a very strong person even throwing a little bit of water, but much more likely is the roof over the stadium. Even if it's on, there's a little bit of rain comes in from the side. He might possibly have got spat on by the rain. But in order to support the world number one women's, these two incidents have been used to withdraw drinking from the crowd. No alcohol in the stadium. It's encouraged almost to binge outside the stadium in the grounds after you've paid for your very expensive ticket, but not in the stadium. New rule. But beware of light touch security. Yes, there's a very attractive staff holding those little seatbelt-like barriers at waist height, checking your app to go in. And there's the almost gendarmes walking around the grounds. You'll search before you go in. But there's also plainclothed young people. You calling out enthusiastically or inopportunely could get you three people's attention. The plainclothed calls in their more official-looking colleague to consult and observe. What do you want to do? Is the view like in big stadiums? Yeah. No, it's not like on the telly. You can hardly make out their features.
Les huitièmes de finale, ici à Roland Garros. Une immense joie, j'imagine, ce soir.
Security in a big stadium, there's a shh that goes around the start, but you can tell that it's also emanating from the speakers. When all the play is done, the crowd goes home orderly and quietly, en masse, respectful of residents. But in the stadium, especially for Corentin, Moutet, the French player at Roland Garros, he has his fan club of rabble-rousers, half a dozen to a dozen young guys. Oh, and do they get the crowd going? It's hard to believe. There is bowing, arms up in the air, bowing, just going, Montet, 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 over and over and over again, like a Mexican wave, but all in unison. This is probably 10,000 people. It's full-on pantomime, but the plays are just so world-class. It's partly the agility, which makes him look a bit like Malfis. Of yesteryear, it just gets to everything, and such variety of shots. Where the French Federation placed their microphones in a crowd would have had no escape. But it was a very well-mannered football crowd. There was none of the going after the opponent's mother or anything, as can be the case in the wildness of the American college tennis tour, as Felix Aliassim's opponent has enlightened us. After Moutet asked him wasn't one of his cheeky little so-and-so's underarm serves, they erupt, but when Bastian did exactly the same successfully, he did the same arms outstretched, backwards little pirouette, palms upstretched, encouraging the crowd. And they responded. A good third of the stadium, in great nature, calling out his name and bowing, just exactly the same for really quite an extended period. They just love a tight game. They love seeing the raw competition of it all, the respect and the cheek between the opponents. What always strikes me as a very useful shot, and I have seen it used a couple of times in this tournament, really letting a forehand topspin fly straight at the body of the opponent. Yes, it hurts them, and you're supposed to put your hand up in a sort of apology, but it'd work. It's frowned upon. But I'm sad to say I didn't have a ticket for the next Moutet game, which was against Jannik Sinner. Very similar players in the way they play, but very different personalities, you'd say. Don't know what Sinner's like at playing the piano or rapping. He always comes off as a bit more introverted. Didn't seem to have any fans in the largest of the two State 3 stadiums that I saw him in. What was a bit of a bland training easy match for him. Get to the Moutet meet, watching it in our little Paris Puy-de-Terre garret with lift and 2 sets of stairs of equal quality, so perhaps it wasn't a service entrance, perhaps it was 1 stair for men, 1 stair for women. But the French Federation had got, through lots of subtle means, they'd got to Corentin Moutet by the time of his match to the world's Australian Open winner. They'd had words with his team. I think there's a possibility that his rabble-rousers were denied. The game I was watching, security had been sent in. 6 or 9 guys assembled down 1 staircase near the rabble-rousers. They very obviously walked all the way across a quarter of the stadium and spoke to Montet's box. Clearly said, yes, they're with us. The security walked off, uniform security, like gendarme looking. No further than the last of the 9, and the players' team turned to the rabble-rouser team. Big thumbs up of encouragement. No, you're not in trouble, keep going. Sinner's Carota boys are nowhere in sight these days. I don't think they're getting their freebies anymore now he's got the world's attention. He wants to have a serious player legacy. And it was a bit gingerist, but the French Federation have got to Moutet. They've decided that they want to turn him into a serious player. There was no real evidence of the excessive bowing and chanting that I described earlier. The montet, like a Mexican wave, in unison. And in the game that I watched live, there was no one calling, Corentin, come on Corentin. That's what it was replaced by, pretty much. Corentin made a bit of a bounce of his racket directly onto the ground net in irritation, and he made the slightest show of symbolically trying to break his racket in half sideways, but that wasn't anything like real. It was much more of a show of rebellion against the French Federation's civilising constraints. But it bit him straight back. A line call when he's doing his underarm serve. Any serve, apparently. No one knows this rule. The ball has got to hit the ground on the other side of the net before the server's feet enter his own court. So if you're jumping up in the air doing a smash serve, you come down from the ground if you touch the white line, and the ball's not in the opponent's court. That's a foot fault, perhaps more obvious when it's a slower looping underarm serve. To say that he had a rant with the umpire about this isn't really fair, but he did have an extended dialogue with him, which they filmed in a shaky camera view from the umpire, which I've personally never seen before, because the camera's attached to the umpire's head, so being shaky it looks like he's going crazy at the guy. It's a bit fisheye lens as well, so it's a bit in your face, unnecessarily. And so the editing and the line call, because it's just got to be the French Federation taming their own player and grooming them for greater things in the eye of the French Federation. What about the guy himself, his father, and his piano teacher? He knows what he's doing, he knows what he needs, he knows how he's marketing himself, and they're quashing him.
J'avais dit quoi? Bravo à nous, merci beaucoup, bravo à nous pour aujourd'hui. On a été forts, merci beaucoup pour votre soutien.
C'est vraiment un plaisir d'être en deuxième semaine ici. Depuis que je suis tout petit, je regarde ce tournoi, c'était un de mes rêves. J'ai regardé Nadal gagner 25 fois ici, donc ça a toujours été un de mes rêves d'aller loin dans ce tournoi. Et aujourd'hui c'est moi, je suis en deuxième semaine, donc j'espère encore aller plus loin. Mais en tout cas, déjà, je suis super heureux d'y être. Merci beaucoup.
Tu avais face à toi ce soir, Corentin, un adversaire qui avait déjà joué 7h48 de tennis lors des 2 premiers tours. Est-ce que ça faisait partie de ton plan de te dire que plus ça allait durer, plus ça allait peut-être tourner en ton sens?
Ouais, c'est sûr, je suis obligé de le féliciter. En tant que joueur de tennis, on sait combien c'est dur d'enchaîner les matchs. Franchement, bravo à lui, je sais que je démarrais avec un avantage physique. Il a joué 2 fois 5-7, c'est extrêmement dur de récupérer en grand chelem. Il a joué hier. On a fini tard, donc bravo à lui, je pense qu'il mérite des applaudissements, bravo à lui.
Je te laisse un tout dernier mot pour le public. Tu suis à Anglais, tu l'as dit, qualification historique en deuxième semaine. Il y avait déjà un petit air de deuxième semaine dans l'ambiance ici sur le Langlaine ce soir.
J'ai rien compris.
Je te disais, le dernier mot pour le public. Tu l'as dit, c'est historique, ta qualification en deuxième semaine ici à Roland-Garros. Mais côté ambiance, on était déjà en deuxième semaine ce soir.
Je n'ai pas compris, mais je vais répondre quand même. C'est la fin, j'ai du mal. Mais non, historique, non. Je suis qu'en huitième de finale, donc non, historique, non. Mais en tout cas, j'espère aller plus loin, je vais donner le maximum. J'espère que vous avez kiffé ce soir. J'espère vous faire kiffer encore plein de matchs cette année. Ça fait plaisir, on est chez nous. Aujourd'hui, c'était sympa aussi parce qu'il y a eu du soutien pour lui. Je pense qu'il y a eu beaucoup de respect aussi pour mon adversaire. Et ça n'empêche pas de me soutenir, donc c'est vraiment une ambiance incroyable. Merci.
Félicitations, merci. Corentin Moutet.
But I was in the same room, the same court room, personal, with Andy Murray and Dan Evans, and got quite a lot of eye contact from them. They were up against a South American pair, including the world number 20. Why was I getting quite a lot of eye contact from them? Well, my partner and I, the more knowledgeable one, had got separated in order to get into this small court, but she wanted to get in as much as me, more. So unusual behaviour from her, she sort of ducked between a railing and a bush. So further down, after doing a little hop over a railing that apparently you weren't supposed to, I went back and went further along the bush. Well, there's plenty of holes in it. But I'd been there a little while, and 3 English pissed-up prats, I think you'd call them, came in, stood right next to me and started being really challengingly obnoxious. To me, to try and edge me out to get a bit more room, I think. But then they were cheering on Andy Murray, but 75% louder than necessary, or anyone else. They could obviously afford the €10 a pint and €2 for the deposit from the automatic beer dispensers. No barmaids to say, "I think you've had a little too much, sir," in French. And they definitely had that private school accent. But something about the look of them, a little bit special needs. At one juncture, Dan Evans needed to have a toilet break. So we were left with Andy Murray doing a bit of stretching of his hip, doing a pelvic thrust in my direction from the opposite side of the court, being end on. It's a bit strange, you can get these long outs. I'm there going, "It was good," to line calls when it's what's known as a long out, apparently. So everyone was quite quiet during the toilet break. I felt the need to explain to the crowd that in Britain we don't dop our special needs from embarrassing themselves. Special needs children are allowed to enjoy themselves and express themselves. It's nurtured. How we treat the unfortunate in society is a reflection of our society. I wanted to explain to the crowd how we sometimes elect them to be our Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, much like they do in America, Donald Trump, but without the taint of the sex pest aspect. All Andy and Dan wanted me to do by eye contact communication was to start a shh, going round the little bank of seating, a shush instead of a Mexican wave. Now, I personally would never shush a classroom. Any child, you'd be in trouble. There was another Englishwoman of equal privilege to them that was ranging them for their embarrassing behaviour, but she started getting touched on the shoulder once or twice to get her attention, to wind her up even further, because she bit. But light touch security in a big stadium, there's a shh goes round the start, but you can tell that it's also emanating from the speakers. When all the play is done, the crowd goes home orderly and quietly, en masse, respectful of residents. But in the stadium,